G'day all, welcome back to Dad vs Son and our continuing playthrough of GMT and Chad Jensen's Combat Commander. We're going on with the Paratroops Battle Pack and we're now doing scenario 26, Turnbull Turns Em. Righto, so this one, the situation report is... and I apologise for my French pronunciation because I don't speak French. Neuville-la-Plaine, France, 6 June 44. It's D-Day and the 82nd Airborne Division is struggling to consolidate its defences at Saint-Mire-Église. Expecting a counterattack from the north, 3rd Battalion, 505th Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin van der Voort, orders D Company's 3rd Platoon, led by 1st Lieutenant Turner Turnbull, to block route D15 at Neuville-la-Plaine. Shortly after arriving, Turnbull's force of 43 men spot a large column of men in Feldgrau approaching down the highway, apparently escorted by soldiers wearing American paratroopers' uniforms. Wary of a ruse, an American machine gunner fires warning shots into a nearby field. The German prisoners dive for the ditches. After fanning out in either direction in order to try and outflank the outnumbered but well-entrenched Americans, the German attack commences. So we're in 1944. The victory point marker starts on 26 for the Allies. The Allies are elite troops with 2 orders. The Germans are line troops with 5 orders. The time track starts at 3 with sudden death at 10. The Allies are defending, Axis attacking, and the Allies have the initiative card. Objectives A, B, Q, and W are open. A says that Objective 1 is worth 1 VP. B, Objective 2 is worth 1 VP. Q, Objective 5 is worth 5 VP. And W, exit points are doubled. Both sides have a random objective, secret, but I am going to turn them so that you can actually see them because I need to keep up with the victory points for this. So the German secret objective is that Objective 2 is worth 2 VP and Objective 2 at the moment nobody holds. And the Americans, that Objective 4 is worth 1 VP, and at the moment nobody holds Objective 4. So I'm just going to place those into the open objectives now as well. Righto, so other than that, the Axis set up 1 hex deep to the south, the Allies set up 4 hexes deep to the north. And as I said, the Allies hold Objectives 1 and 5. The Germans hold Objective 3. It's a simultaneous setup, so you're supposed to put a board or something in between. So what I did is I turned off my left lobe and set up the Allies, and then I turned off my right lobe and had no lobes left, so I just set up the Germans anyway and went from there. That was the first special rule. Okay, forces-wise, this is what we have. Sorry, bit wonky. There we go. Okay, so the Germans have Hauptmann Welling, Lieutenant Hunzinger, Lieutenant Lauerbach, Sergeant Benzing, 1 elite rifle squad, 10 rifle squads, 1 Volksgrenadier squad, 4 line teams, 1 light mortar and 3 light machine guns, and they've been set up in this configuration. So Lieutenant Huntsinger is over here with his elite rifle team. I have misplaced a normal rifle team at the moment, so I've given him another elite. I didn't think it was going to make that much of a difference. Hauptmann Welling is here with 5 rifle teams, the mortar and a light machine gun. Lieutenant Laubeck is over here with 3 rifle teams and a light machine gun. And Sergeant Benzing is over here with a Volksgrenadier rifle squad as well, and the other light machine gun. The second special rule is that Sergeant Benzing can act as a spotter for the mortar, and that's why I've separated them. And if we use Sergeant Benzing as the mortar spotter, then that counts as a activation for him. The target roll is still the distance from the light mortar to the target, but the hindrance is taken from Sergeant Benzing. If we use the light mortar as its own spotter, then distance and hindrance is from the light mortar. So that's that. The Americans I've set up into basically 3 groups as well. Over here in the foxholes, in fact, I'll tell you exactly what the Americans have got first. They have Lieutenant Esparza, Lieutenant Thomas, Corporal Twells, 3 paratroop squads, 2 elite teams, 2 machine guns and a foxhole. So Corporal Twells is over here with a paratroop squad in foxholes. Lieutenant Esparza is here with a paratroop and a team with a medium machine gun. Lieutenant Thomas here with a team with a medium machine gun and a paratroop squad over here in these buildings. So all of these are in 3 cover, which is good. The Americans hold objective 5 up here and objective 1 at the moment. The Germans hold objective 3. Objective 4 and objective 2 are the 2 outstanding objectives. Okay, so what I'll do is stop it there and show you what each side's plans are and so forth, and then we can come back and get into the game. So I'm going to try and do this as a narrative sort of thing, so we'll see how that works out. So won't be long. Hauptmann Welling decided he wasn't a very happy man. He looked around. He'd sent some people forward to have a quick gander at what was happening as he made his plans. The Americans seemed to be well entrenched and their flanks looked relatively secure, but he decided the best thing he could do was to send Lieutenant Huntsinger forward on the left flank, try and cross the open ground in front of him, and then move along through objective 1 and around to the American right flank. As he contemplated this, he thought of Sergeant Benzing, Feldwebel Benzing. He wants him to move forward. He sends orders for him to go forward, up into the tree line, to the front of the woods. He should be able to see if there are any American forces up there on the American left flank. He'll also be able to bring in some mortar fire from that area, hopefully. After he's done that, if possible, he's going to try and get him to move up through objective 2, up through the fields, and then try and flank them. Lieutenant Laubeck, his mission is to get up into the orchard and the farmhouse there, move up to the front of the orchard in behind the hedgerows and bring fire down onto any American positions that have been identified, other than the machine gun that had fired before, if it's still there. Himself and his people, well, they've got the worst job. They have to move up out of the woods, up to the hedgerow, and try and set down some fire as well. But they're going to be basically out in the open with very, very little cover. If it becomes possible, then he intends to try and then assault forward into the American left flank and try and take out that machine gun position and roll up the flank and take the objective on the roadway. It's not going to be easy, and he's not really looking forward to it, but he's not sure how it's going to go. While the Germans are working out what they're trying to do, Lieutenant Esperanza is not a happy man. He shouldn't even be here. He belongs to the Pathfinders. But just after the Germans were spotted, Lieutenant Turnbull came down with a new case of malaria from his days in North Africa. So he's been pushed forward to take care of it. Alongside him, he brought forward Lieutenant Thomas, who's one of the artillery forward's observers, just in case they can get some artillery support into them. He has a look at the fire plans for all his positions. He's collected a copy of each of the field cards, and he has a look over at the paratroopers on his right flank. They've got fairly good coverage out to Objective 1, but there's some dead ground right up to their northwest that he just can't see into whatsoever. The paratroopers have got a secondary fire plan as well that'll help to support some of the dead ground. Lieutenant Thomas and his machine gun are well suited to cover the dead ground in front of the hedgerow to the south, and also along the front of the hedgerow to the north. So they'll be able to give some good supporting fire to the paratroop squad before they come under fire themselves, hopefully. He can also cover most of the roadway, and secondary fire-wise, he can also cover right over to the eastern flank towards Objective 2 and that area, and the front of the orchard. Spaz's own team is in the central position. They have a good field of fire to the east, and will look after primarily the eastern flank out to Objective 2 and the front of the orchard area. They can also get some fire down in towards the rear of the orchard if the Germans start to infiltrate through there. As their secondary fire lane, they can fire out to the west in support of Lieutenant Thomas. So hopefully they can catch the Germans in any sort of crossfire as they come out there. Corporal Twelves is the biggest problem. He just doesn't have the range to reach down to the woods to the southeast. He can observe, but realistically he can only cover as far as Objective 2, and then a little further north with some dead ground that he can't see at all. Corporal Twelves has been advised that if he sees Germans infiltrate past his position, then he can redeploy himself into the orchard to his east so he can bring fire upon them, and then as necessary fall back to either the farmhouse to his northwest or back into his foxholes again. There is little likelihood, he knows, of there being any artillery support or any reinforcements before late in the afternoon or early evening. He's hoping that they can hold, but he's not sure how many troops are coming against him or what quality they are. He knows that his own ammunition supply is relatively good, but he's warned everybody to save as much ammo as possible, take the shots that are best, hopefully when the enemy are more in the open rather than in cover, and he's also aware that grenades are fairly scarce as well, and is unlikely to get any more. This is how things stand for him at the moment. It's hold and die, or hold and live, with nowhere to go. As he waits for the Germans to move forward, he tries and makes other plans, but he knows that the chances of being able to do anything else are slim to none. In the event that battalion gives him orders, he could be forced to move some of his forces forward into Objective 4. He's not looking forward to that prospect whatsoever, because that'll leave those troops out on a limb, even though they'll be able to cover off some of the wooded terrain around him. He's hoping the battalion doesn't have its head up its arse like it does a lot of times. All he can do is wait, hope and pray that the Germans will fall back before they overrun his positions. Righto, we're back. We're ready to get into it. And Captain Velling looks at what his options are. And at the moment, he knows that he's got the firepower to do just about anything he wants. His medic is ready to support them. He's ready to push through and rout any enemy that he can. But what he wants to really do is get some people moving to start with. So he sends an order over to Feldwebel and Benzing and says, take them forward, get some eyes on this American left flank and see if we can actually identify anybody over there, because the only people we know that are there at the moment was a machine gun that was in this area. Benzing shakes his head and goes, yeah, bloody typical. Send the bloody NCOs forward first, not a bloody officer. But he signals to his troops and they move forward. He sends his rifle platoon forward first. 2, 4. The rifle platoon looks out, but can't see anything. His line of sight to any American positions is basically blocked. Sergeant Benzing brings his troops forward. 2, 4. With his Volksgrenadiers and his light machine gun, and looks out. He can see some American helmets over behind the wall near a farmhouse and another little orchard. He's not sure how many troops are there, but he radios it back to the Hauptmann, and the Hauptmann is now aware of American troops over in that area. The only trouble is that Benzing doesn't have the time to set up and call in fire from the mortar. So Captain Velling, Hauptmann Velling, decides to wait and see what happens. What will the Americans do? As the Germans move into the tree line, Corporal 12 can see them, but he knows that they're out of range of him and his people. He radios it through to Spaz and lets him know what's going on. Spaz decides he could really do with some artillery, but it's been denied and he can't get any. He doesn't know whether he needs to move any troops or not at the moment, so he decides not to. He knows that there's no sense in advancing forward because it's just open ground. And he can't bring any fire to bear whatsoever. So he decides that he's simply going to wait and see what else the Germans are going to do. While this is going on, Hauptmann Velling requests some artillery so that he can try and break up the Americans, but it's just not happening. So he decides that he can't move anybody further forward at the moment. But what he can do is try and bring some fire down onto that American position with his mortar. The mortar's range is 12. Benzing is spotting. He calls over the coordinates to the mortar. The mortar preps, and it's no good. There's something wrong with the sighting mechanism and it's going to have to be fixed. There's not much else that he can do at the moment, so the Hauptmann waits. Things are too quiet. Spaz is not happy. He knows he could bring fire, but he doesn't have range to do anything. His medics are set up a casualty clearing post, ready to go. He knows that his artillery has been denied, and there's little chance of routing any enemy troops at the moment. Everything is up to the Germans at the moment. Oops. The only chance he may have is if the enemy moves into some hidden mines that he has placed out in front of his positions. The Germans, though, still waiting to see what's going on. Can't find any other movement forward. So they decide, Huntsinger, move forward. No, wait. Lauerback, get up there. See if you can find anything. Lauerback orders his troops forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, and has taken objective 4. 1 VP. So the VP marker comes down to 25. He then moves his other rifle squad forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, into the orchard, over the hedgerow. But Spaz can see him and decides to fire. Using opportunity fire. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's in range of all of his troops within his position. He orders the machine gun to fire for 8, for 9, for 10. But there is some hindrance of 2, so he can only get 8 firepower in there. Plus 9 is 17. The fire should be able to do something to this guy. The German ducks down. They spread out in amongst the trees. They're there for 8, plus 6. It's no good, and they're hit. Spaz and the machine gunner wait for any other further movement that they can see. As that's happening, Lauerback brings the rest of his forces forward. 2, 3, 4. He can hear the moans and screams of some of his wounded men, but he can't see anything else that's going on, and nobody can apparently see him either. At this stage, he decides to stop everybody where they are and see what comes from the Americans. Spaz looks around. His medics are ready to go. His mines are ready to go, but he has nothing worthwhile at the moment. So it's a waiting game, and he waits patiently to see what the Germans are going to do. The Germans again call for artillery, but it's denied. They decide that there's little chance of routing the enemy at the moment, so they decide to wait the Americans out for a little while, see what happens. The Americans at this time, their medics working overtime to set up their casualty clearing point, decide that they still have to wait. And they're going to outweight the Germans. Hauptmann-Wehling is getting a bit peeved. This battle's not going the way he expected. He decides to call for more artillery, but again it's denied. He knows that he's got plenty of firepower, but he needs to get it forward. He tells Lauerback, get forward, get set up, get ready to go. Lauerback looks at his troops and signals them. His wounded troops drag themselves over, out of the line of fire. Lauerback and his team move forward into a dead ground. But as they do, they land in some American mines. The mines go off for a 6. Plus 9, 15 firepower. The light machine gun team tries to jump out of the way for 7, 8. Nothing else. And they're fine. They survive. But all this is taking time. It's now time for the Americans pick up a victory point because they're holding out. Lauerback's trying to think about what he can do. The Hauptmann has heard the mine go off. He doesn't know what's happening with his troops at the moment. He decides, we'll dig in, but there's no time to do so. The rifle squad spreads out, trying to keep away from the mines. For 7, 8, and 6 is 14, but they're too slow, and one of them trips the mine, exploding in his face. Lowerback tries to throw himself away from the blast for 9, 10, and does so behind a tree and is safe. The medics with Lowerback get to work on their troops to see if they can fix them up. The ones over here for 8, and they're good. He patches them up. They're ready to go. A German sniper gives covering fire out to I3 and takes out the American machine gun team, which is fired. The medics are also working on our bloke here, 7, 8, 9. And they patch him up as well, superficial. The trees blocked a lot of the shrapnel and blast. Again, Huttman-Velling calls out to Benzing, says, get some mortar fire onto that known position. So again, the mortar tools up, ready to go. A distance 12. And again, the sighting mechanism is not working and nothing occurs. Velling is starting to tear his hair out. This is not going the way he expected. The Americans, on the other hand, are quite happy. So far, things aren't too bad, but with all the noise, there's a bit of command confusion. There's still no chance of routing the American forces, the German forces. But he has to get his machine gun back, ready to fire. The medics rush forward to the machine gunner and his teammate, the 8, 10, 13, and start to patch him up and do well. He's back. Whilst that's occurring, we have a look and we work out that the Germans want objective 4, which they've taken. Mongrels. Okay. We're back. We're bad. At this time, there's nothing more that the Americans could do. It's becoming a waiting game. Huttman-Velling is still trying to work out what he can do to get his people forward safely. His medics restock their satchels. Things are becoming a little confused, but he still has lots of firepower. He decides there's not much he can do at the moment. He needs to reset, relook at his plans, and work out a way forward. The Americans, on the other hand, the medics head back to the casualty clearing point. We've requested artillery, but still nothing there. We're hoping that the Germans might move forward and trip over some of the wire that we've hidden. But with the confusion and no chance to rout them, it's still a waiting game. The Huttman has had another think. Things are starting to unravel. He knows that he has no chance to rout the enemy troops, especially while there's confusion in amongst his people. But he decides to bring more fire again onto the American left flank with the mortar, if possible. The order goes out, but the base plate falls off. He is not a happy man. He pulls out his pistol and he shoots the mortar commander and tells the others to get their shit together. The Americans hear the single pistol shot. Still no artillery. They're still looking at somebody to fire at. and there's still no chance of routing their troops. So they wait. The Hauptmann decides enough's enough and orders Laubach to advance his forces into a firing position. Laubach advances up to the front. He knows that now, if that machine gun position still exists, he could come under fire. His other man here moves over in support. These guys are still getting their shit together. He again tries to bring some mortar fire onto the American positions, and it's successful. The mortar's fire, shooting the mortar commanders, appears to have worked. But it's all taking time as they stand there listening to the mortar round whistle away towards the American lines. Time goes to 5. The Americans have more chance to dig in. Their victory points go up by 1. Again, he looks at digging in, but there's just nothing to dig into. The mortar lands with a 6 and 7, 13. Whilst that's occurring, the excuse me. One of his troops has a bright idea. That's because he's a veteran. And he's happy to go forward with stuff. The mortar lands. The squad ducks down into their foxholes for 8, 9, 3 plus 1 for the mortar. So 13. And a safe. Corporal Twells is the last to duck his head, but is still safe. He wanted to keep an eye on where that mortar was coming from and going to. Okay. Laubach, radio's back. He's in position, but it's precarious. He's out in the open, very little cover, and can't move forward any further. Velling tells him, start to dig in if possible, stay there. The Sparza at this stage is still requesting artillery. He knows he can fire and decides to get Thomas to fire his machine gun at these exposed troops. Thomas gets his team ready to fire. Range of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. His machine gun fires for 7. He has nothing to add to it. Plus 6, 13. The American sniper opens up in support at N6. But it's short. The machine gun team for the Germans hits the ground for 7, 8, 9, ducking behind the trees. And 4 is 13. They've been suppressed. The squad hits the ground as well. 8, 9, 10, 15. And they're good. Laubach himself hits the ground, lying behind one of the trees behind the hedge for 9, 10. But's hit. The Americans decide there's little chance of doing much else. We'll fire some more and try and rout them. 11. Oh, wrong one, sorry. And they suppress them, but don't rout them. Hopefully it'll make them easier to hit next time. There's little else they can do at this stage. So they wait to see what the Germans are up to. Velling really wants to get the rest of his troops forward, but there's not a thing he can do. His troops are confused. His troops are even thinking of routing themselves at this stage. He decides he needs to get them fixed up, ready to go. So the medics move forward again, trying to fix up Lieutenant Lauerbeck so he can get back into command of his troops. And they succeed. His skull was just creased. He's back in command. He's happy to go. Things are doing okay. But again, he decides this time he wants to shoot back. Lauerbeck decides if he shoots over it to the house, the chances of hitting anybody aren't all that good. But he might be able to suppress the machine gun. So he tells his people to shoot over that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In range. In range. The rifle squad takes the lead with 6, 7, 8 for the machine gun, firing up towards Lieutenant Thomas. +7, 15. At that stage, we look around and none of our people are broken or adjacent, so nobody's going to be eliminated. The fire comes in on Thomas and his people. Machine gunner pulls away from the wall. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and is safe. Thomas ducks down as well and is safe. And the Germans wait. The Americans again have a look at what their options are. They're still asking for artillery, but it's no good. The medics are still ready, but aren't needed. Do we move? Do we advance? And again, the answer is no. Let's wait, see what the Germans do, see what we can do about it. The Germans are still not in a good way. The medics are the only thing that are doing any good. The chances of routing the Americans amongst the command confusion that they have is zip. So they decide to use a bit of psychological warfare and wait, see what the Americans do. The Americans are still waiting for artillery support. They're still under some confusion. They know they could fire, but they decide to hold fire and try and catch them in the open. Spaz starts to move around, getting rid of the command confusion amongst his troops. The frustration amongst the Germans is becoming greater, and they decide they have a good chance to get some people forward. Captain Velling orders Lieutenant Huntsinger forward with his troops, and they start to infiltrate up through the forests. 2, 4, 6. 1, 3, 5. As they're moving up towards their jump-off point to clear the open ground, get up into there. He also tells Lieutenant Lauerbeck to reposition his troops so that they're under less firepower. That Lauerbeck says, there's really nowhere to go. I can bring some of my troops forward, but we're still going to come under fire from the other American machine gun. So Velling says, fine, we'll come up in support. And he decides to bring his people forward. His first rifle squad moves forward. 2, 3, 4. The squad is spotted. but nobody can really see him. They saw movement, but that was it. His other rifle squad moves forward, out on his right flank. 1, 2. Lieutenant Thomas can see him. So can Spaz. Spaz decides, I'll fire, because I've got the better firepower. Spaz gets his machine gun set up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's out of range of the squad. Sorry. He fires off. 6, 2 is 8. There's no hindrance. There's nothing to add to it. 8 and 9, 17. It's good fire. The rifle squad hits the ground. 8 and 8, 16, and is hit. Chewed up. Not happy, Jan. Not happy at all. His next rifle squad moves up with the mortar. 2, 4. The mortar moving in just behind. Nobody can see them. The other rifle squad moves forward. 2, 3, 4, and again can be spotted by Spaz, who taps his machine gunner on the head and says, get 'em, for 8 and 7, 15. We don't want to redeploy any of our squads and turn them into teams, so we forget about that. They hit the ground for a 7. +1 is 8. +9 is 17. They skipped out of the way, zigged when they should have zigged, zagged when they should have zagged, and got out of the way. Velling starts to move forward with his troops and runs into barbed wire, strung cunningly low at ankle height in the trees. It's going to take them a little while to get out of it. Nobody else can move at this time. Velling sends a message back over to Sergeant Bering, the Feldwebel, and says, I'd like to fire the mortar, but I can't get to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a medic forward to try and help our little friend up there. He sends the medic forward up to this guy here, who's sitting there for 8, and fixes him up. It was only minor wounds. While that's occurring, his sappers remove the wire that he's come across. And then I remembered that I hadn't put the mines duver down. So this guy will only get it when he comes out rather than going in. Apologies for that. The Germans can't do anything else at this stage. So they wait. See what the Americans are going to do. How they're going to react. And the Americans decide to do nothing. And that's it for the first video. When we come back, it'll be back to Hauptmann Wehrling again and his little playthrough and see how we're going. So at the moment, the Germans have now spotted the 3 main positions. They haven't spotted the paratroop yet. He hasn't fired or done anything, so they're not quite sure if there's somebody there or not. They've been able to take Objective 4 after traipsing through the minefield. They got caught up in some wire here, but did okay, and are starting to bring their forces forward and hopefully trying to overwhelm the American firepower. The Americans holding well, not getting into it, not getting out of it, just doing their job. So I'll put this first turn up. You can let me know what you think, and then if need be, I'll stop doing the narration side of it. But if you like it, then we'll keep on going. So take care, be good, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.